I found a group chat where my fiancée called me a placeholder until she can marry rich. When I confronted her, she said, "You were never meant to know." Her best friend sent me a voice note. "She's planning to leave you right after the wedding." I canceled everything. Her reaction? She screamed, "I deserve that money." I always thought love was supposed to be the one thing in life you could trust. I wasn't the kind of guy who believed in soulmates or fate or any of that fairy tale bullshit, but I did believe in commitment. I believed that when two people promised to spend their lives together, it meant something. That's what I thought I had with Isabel. For 3 years, I thought we were building something real. We moved in together, split bills, cooked dinner together, argued about dumb things like laundry and who left dishes in the sink. Normal couple stuff. We had inside jokes. We had routines. I thought we had love. Turns out, I was nothing more than a stepping stone. A placeholder. I found out the truth completely by accident. It was a Tuesday night. She had borrowed my laptop earlier that day for work, something about checking a spreadsheet. I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? She'd used my computer before, and I trusted her. But when I opened it later that evening, her messages were still logged in. I wasn't even trying to snoop. I just clicked to close out of the browser, but something caught my eye. A group chat with a few of her friends. I don't know what made me stop and actually look. Maybe it was just instinct, or maybe some part of me already knew, deep down, that something wasn't right. Either way, my eyes landed on a single message from Isabel, and it felt like my entire body turned to ice. "Isabel, ugh, I can't believe I have to pretend to be excited for this wedding. I deserve better than this." My stomach dropped. For a second, I convinced myself I was reading it wrong. Maybe she meant something else. Maybe she was talking about a wedding for one of her friends. But then I saw the reply. Jessica, her best friend. "You're seriously going through with it?" Isabel, "Of course. He's not my dream guy, but he's stable. I'll stick around until I find someone richer. No point in wasting time now." I stopped breathing. My brain refused to process what I was reading. This was Isabel, the woman I had planned a life with, the woman I had loved for years, the woman I was about to marry in 3 months. My hands were shaking as I scrolled up. Message after message, every single one worse than the last. Isabel, "Zach is sweet, but let's be real. He's just a placeholder until I can marry rich." Isabel, "Once the wedding's over, I'll stay for a year or 2 max. Then I'll divorce him and take what I can." I felt like I was going to be sick. The words were so cold, so calculated. Like I wasn't even a person, just a means to an end. I kept reading, my stomach twisting with every line. Jessica, "Girl, I don't know. That's risky." Isabel, "Not really. He's not the type to question things. He trusts me too much. I'll play the loving wife for a while. Then once I've secured enough, I'll leave. If I play it right, I'll get half." I slammed the laptop shut. For a few minutes, I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to understand how the HLL I had been so blind. I replayed every moment in my head, every conversation, every kiss, every "I love you," wondering how much of it had been real. And the worst part? I knew. Deep down, I f-king knew. There had always been signs, little things I brushed off. The way she never really talked about the future in concrete terms. The way she seemed almost uninterested in wedding planning unless it involved money. The way she would sometimes make these offhand comments about wanting a better lifestyle, even though we lived comfortably. But I had ignored it. I had told myself I was overthinking. Turns out, my gut had been screaming the truth all along. I sat there for what felt like hours, rage and heartbreak twisting inside me like a storm. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. How dare she? How dare she look me in the eyes every day, kiss me, make love to me, tell me she loved me, while secretly planning to gut me financially? I wasn't just some disposable man she could use and toss aside. I needed to hear it from her own mouth. When Isabel got home later that night, I was waiting. She walked in, smiling, completely unaware that her entire world was about to come crashing down. "Hey, babe," she said, tossing her keys onto the counter. "What's for dinner?" I didn't answer. She turned to look at me, frowning slightly. "Zach." I gestured to the laptop sitting open on the table. "Care to explain this?" She glanced at the screen, and in that moment, I saw it. The split second of pure panic before she masked it with indifference. Then she rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Zach. You were never meant to see that." That was it. That was her response. No, I didn't mean it. Not it's not what it looks like. Just a casual you weren't supposed to find out. I stared at her, my hands clenched into fists. "So it's true." She let out an exasperated sigh, crossing her arms. "Look, you're overreacting. You're a safe choice, Zach. That's a good thing." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. "A good thing," I repeated, my voice shaking. "You plan to use me. Marry me. Then leave me once you've found someone richer." She scoffed. "It's not that deep. You act like I don't care about you at all." I felt like my entire body was burning. "You don't. I shot back. You were going to F-King destroy me. And for what? Money. She had the audacity to shrug. I deserve a certain lifestyle, Zach. And if you can't provide it forever, that's not my fault. I didn't trust myself to speak. Instead, I pulled out my phone and hit call on a name I never thought I'd need. Her best friend, Jessica. She answered on the second ring. Zach, tell me the truth, I said, my voice like ice. Did Isabel tell you she was planning to leave me after the wedding? Silence. Then, finally, in a low, regretful voice, Jessica said, check your messages. A second later, my phone buzzed. A voice note. I pressed play, and there it was. Isabel's voice, clear as day. Once the wedding's over, I'll bide my time. Maybe a year. Maybe 2. Then I'll leave. If I play my cards right, I'll get half. Everything inside me went numb. I looked up at Isabel, who was standing there, watching me. And for the first time, I saw her for what she really was. A liar. A user. A gold digger. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I sat there, phone still in my hand, listening to the last few seconds of that voice note. Isabel's voice had been so casual, so matter-of-fact, like she was discussing weekend plans instead of plotting to ruin my life. I looked up at her. She had gone pale, but she wasn't crying, wasn't apologizing. She was just watching me like she was calculating her next move. You recorded me? She finally hissed, turning her anger toward Jessica. Jessica, still on the phone, let out a humorless laugh. Oh, now you have a problem with it? Isabel, you've been bragging about this plan for months. You think I'm the only one who's sick of hearing it? I barely heard them. My mind was racing too fast, my pulse pounding in my ears. You planned all of this, I said slowly, staring at Isabel like I'd never seen her before. Every single bit of it. The engagement, the wedding, the future you pretended to want with me. It was all just part of your scam. Her lips pressed together. It wasn't a scam, Zach, she said, feigning patience like she was explaining something to a child. It was practical. You're acting like this is some huge betrayal, but women have been doing this forever. It's survival. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Survival. I repeated. You're not surviving SHD, Isabel. You've been living in my apartment, driving the car I helped you finance, eating food I paid for, and somehow that still wasn't enough. Her jaw tightened. I shouldn't have to settle, Zach. And that right there, was the moment I realized there wasn't a single thing I could say that would make her feel guilty. She wasn't capable of guilt. Every moment we'd spent together, every late-night conversation, every quiet morning making coffee, every time she had kissed me and told me she loved me, it had all been fake. Or maybe not fake. Maybe I was just convenient. Wow, I whispered, shaking my head. I really loved you. Her expression faltered for just a second. Zach, come on. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. No, I snapped. No, you don't get to Zach, come on me. You don't get to act like this was anything other than what it was. You played me, Isabel. You used me. And you weren't even going to wait until the ink was dry on the damn marriage certificate before you started looking for an upgrade. She threw up her hands. Okay, fine. Yes, I was planning on leaving eventually. But I was still going to marry you, wasn't I? That counts for something. I barked out a laugh. Are you hearing yourself? She crossed her arms. Zach, let's be real. You knew deep down that I wasn't in love with you. But I chose you because you're reliable, because you're safe. Most men would take that as a compliment. I stared at her. You're actually insane. God, you're so dramatic, she muttered, rubbing her temples. You're acting like I CH'd on you or something. All I did was plan for my future. Isn't that what responsible adults do? Planning for the future is saving money. It's investing wisely. It's finding a partner you actually give a SHD about. I shot back. It's not using someone as a financial backup plan until something better comes along. She let out a long, slow breath like I was the one being difficult. Then just like that, her demeanor shifted. Her shoulders relaxed. Her face softened. She reached out, brushing her fingers over my wrist like she hadn't just spent months plotting against me. Zach, she said in that soft, sweet voice I used to love. We don't have to let this ruin us. I still care about you. I yanked my arm away. Stop. Her eyes flickered with something, annoyance maybe. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. You know what's crazy? I muttered, half to myself. Even after reading everything, even after hearing that voice note, some part of me was still hoping there was an explanation. That maybe I'd misunderstood. That maybe... I broke off, shaking my head. But there's nothing to misunderstand, is there? She didn't answer. I laughed bitterly. You were never planning to stay, were you? She hesitated. And that was all the answer I needed. I took a step back, nodding to myself. All right, I said, voice tight. Then we're done. And I mean really done. Her eyes widened. Wait, I'm canceling everything. Her whole face twisted. You can't. Watch me. Her nostrils flared. Zach, we have non-refundable deposits. Oh, You mean I have non-refundable deposits? I corrected. Since I paid for every single part of this wedding. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this will be for me? She snapped, throwing up her hands. How am I supposed to explain this to people? I shrugged. Tell them the truth. That you got caught. She let out a frustrated noise, pacing the length of the kitchen. God, you're so f-king selfish. I nearly choked. I'm selfish. I put years into this relationship, Zach. I put in the work, and you're just going to throw it all away like it was nothing. I stared at her in disbelief. You were planning to divorce me. But after the wedding, she stressed. After I got my fair share, I had never wanted to scream at someone so badly in my life. She kept talking, completely oblivious to the fact that every word out of her mouth was making it so much worse. You don't get to just walk away from this like I'm some villain. I deserve that money, Zach. I earned it. You think I wanted to waste my prime years on someone like you? And there it was. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. You are so much worse than I thought. She took a step toward me, her voice softening again. Baby, come on, we can fix this. I took another step back. No, you can fix this. Me? I'm done. She inhaled sharply, nostrils flaring. And then, without warning, she screamed. A full-on, rage-fueled, glass-shattering scream. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the woman I had once planned to marry, watching as she finally showed me who she really was. And I had never been more grateful to see the truth. Isabel's scream cut through the apartment like a KN Fay. I didn't react. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching her unravel in real time. She was shaking, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles had gone white. Her breathing was ragged, her face red with fury. You can't do this to me, Zach. You owe me. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you? Yes, she spat. I spent 3 years of my life with you. Do you think that was easy? Do you think I wanted to settle for? She stopped herself, eyes flashing, but it was too late. I felt my stomach twist. Go on, I said, my voice eerily calm. Say it. She looked away, breathing hard. That's what I thought. For a few moments, the only sound in the room was her sharp, uneven breathing. Then, just as quickly as she had exploded, she changed tactics. Her entire posture softened. Her eyes, those same eyes I used to love, went glassy with unshed tears. She blinked rapidly, like she was trying to force them to spill over. Baby, please, she whispered. I didn't mean any of it. I was just venting. You know how girls talk. I clenched my jaw. You don't get to play the venting card when you were planning to ruin me. She reached for me, but I stepped back. The hurt that flashed across her face was so quick, so practiced, that I almost believed it. Almost. Zach, she murmured, voice shaking. I love you. I let out a short, bitter laugh. No, you love the idea of what I could give you. There's a difference. Her lips trembled. You're really doing this? You're really throwing everything away over one mistake. I narrowed my eyes. One mistake. She nodded frantically. Yes. I panicked. I said stupid things. But it doesn't mean I don't care about you. I just shook my head. You didn't panic, Isabel. You plotted. Her tears dried up fast. Fine. She snapped, her voice turning sharp. You want to act all high and mighty? You want to pretend like I'm the bad guy here? Go ahead. But just know this, Zach. You'll never find someone as good as me. I tilted my head. Oh, you mean someone who loves me? Her jaw twitched. Someone out of your league. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. You really don't get it, do you? She crossed her arms. Get what? I met her gaze, steady and unwavering. That I'd rather be alone for the rest of my life than spend another second with someone as empty as you. Her nostrils flared. I turned away, my mind already moving to the next steps. Canceling the wedding, getting her out of my apartment, cutting her out of my life completely. But Isabel wasn't done. Oh, I dare you to cancel it, she sneered behind me. You think you can just embarrass me like that? You think I'll let you humiliate me? I exhaled sharply. You humiliated yourself. She let out a humorless laugh. You really think you're in control here? I turned back, narrowing my eyes. Aren't I? She smirked. You forget, Zach. You put my name on some of those contracts. My stomach tightened. She saw the flicker of hesitation on my face and grinned. That's right, baby. You want to cancel everything? Go ahead. But it's going to cost you. Big time. I clenched my jaw. I had put some things in her name, small things, deposits for flowers and decorations, stuff I hadn't even thought twice about. It was just easier at the time. And now, she was weaponizing it. Isabel stepped closer, lowering her voice. You walk away from me now, and I'll make sure you pay for it. I held her gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smirk curled at the corner of my lips. Oh, Isabel, I murmured. You have no idea who you just F-ked with. Her smug expression faltered. I turned and walked toward the bedroom, already forming a plan in my mind. She thought she had me trapped. She had no idea what was coming next. I walked into the bedroom, my pulse steady, but my mind running at full speed. Isabel thought she had leverage over me. She thought she could manipulate me into staying, or at least make me suffer if I didn't. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and started making calls. The venue, the catering, the photographer, every vendor I had personally booked. Anything that was in my name, I canceled on the spot. Some deposits were non-refundable. I didn't care. Each time I canceled something, I felt lighter. Like I was shedding dead weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. 15 minutes later, I had wiped out half the wedding. Then I dialed my lawyer. Because Isabel had been right about one thing, I had put some things in her name. But what she didn't know was that I had legal protection for almost everything. Call me paranoid, but my parents' divorce had taught me one thing. Never put yourself in a position where someone else can financially screw you over. I had a prenup ready before I even proposed. I had also made sure every major expense was tied to my personal finances, not our shared account. The few things in her name, I was about to make sure they got transferred right back. By the time I walked back into the living room, Isabel was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, probably texting her friends about how I was ruining her life. She barely looked up. "Hope you're ready to hand me a check," she muttered. I leaned against the doorway, crossing my arms. "Actually, I just got off the phone with my lawyer." That got her attention. Her head snapped up. "What?" I smiled. "Turns out those contracts, the ones in your name." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through an email. "Yeah, those can be transferred back to me. Already in the process." Actually, her eyes widened. "And the ones you signed?" I chuckled. "Yeah, those? That's your problem now." Her phone nearly slipped from her hand. "You're lying." I held up my phone. "Want to see the email?" She shot up from the couch. "You can't just—" "Oh, but I can." She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something I hadn't seen in her before. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear of losing control. Fear of realizing she had nothing to hold over me. She had played the game, and she had lost. Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to form a response, but nothing came out. So I decided to make it easier for her. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough to make sure she really heard me. "The wedding? Canceled. The deposits? Most of them are non-refundable, but that's my loss, not yours. The venue? Gone. The catering? Gone. The dress? I hope you kept the receipt." Her breath hitched. I smiled. "Oh, and one more thing. You're moving out. Tonight." That broke her. She screamed again, a high, frustrated, rage-fueled sound that made my neighbor's dog start barking. "You can't do this to me." I just did. Her whole body shook. "You're going to regret this." I tilted my head. "Am I?" She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You think you're so smart, Zach? Fine, but I will get what I deserve." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Oh, I agree." I smiled. "And what you deserve is nothing." She let out a strangled noise of fury, and for a second, I thought she was going to slap me. I almost wished she would, but instead, she grabbed her purse, yanked her coat off the chair, and stormed toward the door. "You are such an idiot, Zach. You're throwing away the best thing that ever happened to you." I watched as she yanked open the door, turned back, and sneered, "And don't come crawling back when you realize no one else will ever want you." Then she slammed the door so hard that the picture frames on the wall rattled. I stood there, staring at the closed door, exhaling slowly. Then, I grabbed my phone and made one more call. I stood in the silence of my apartment, my mind still buzzing with everything that had just happened. The door she'd slammed was still shaking slightly in its frame. Isabel was gone. For now. But I knew she wasn't finished. She wasn't the type to accept defeat. I took a deep breath and checked my phone again. I had a missed call from my lawyer, a couple of texts from friends asking if everything was okay, and, no surprise, a string of messages from Isabel. "Isabel, you don't get to treat me like this, Zach. I gave you 3 years. You better be ready to pay for everything you canceled. You'll regret this. You humiliated me. I hope you know what you've done." And then, as if her last message wasn't enough to make my blood boil, she sent one more. "Isabel, I should have just shaded when I had the chance." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. If she was trying to get a reaction out of me, she was going to be really disappointed. I ignored her and called my lawyer back. After a quick conversation confirming that I was legally untangled from most of the mess she'd been counting on, I hung up feeling lighter. Isabel had played her hand. Now it was my turn. I knew Isabel. I knew how she operated. She wasn't just going to disappear quietly. No, she was going to spin the story, make herself the victim, and make me out to be the heartless bastard who had abandoned her for no reason at all. And right on cue, my phone started buzzing again. This time, it was my mother. I sighed and answered. "Hey, Mom." "Zachary James Carter," she said, voice sharp. "I just got a call from Isabel's mother." "What on earth is going on?" "Ah, there it was." I rubbed a hand over my face. "Isabel and I broke up. The wedding's off." A stunned silence. Then, She said you blindsided her, my mom exclaimed. She said you canceled everything without even talking to her. I laughed bitterly. That's because she didn't deserve a conversation, Mom. She was using me. She admitted it. My mother hesitated. That doesn't sound like Isabel. I nearly choked. Mom, she literally called me a placeholder until she could marry someone richer. I have proof. Another silence. This one longer. Then a quieter voice. Proof. I took a breath, knowing my mother had always liked Isabel, and sent her the voice note from Jessica. A moment later, I heard the little chime indicating she'd received it. Play that, I said. She went silent. A few seconds passed. Then a minute. Then, oh my God. Yeah, I said flatly. There was another pause before my mother exhaled sharply. That little witch. I almost laughed. Well, she continued, her voice suddenly much less sympathetic toward Isabel. That explains why her mother called me screaming about how selfish you are. Clearly, she didn't know the whole story. Yeah, and I bet Isabel left out the part where she was planning to leave me right after the wedding. I can't even believe this, my mother muttered. The audacity of that girl. And I liked her. I defended her. Yeah, well, I sighed. She fooled a lot of us. My mother took a deep breath. Okay, so what now? Now, I said. Now I clean up the mess and make sure she never gets another dime from me. I wasn't surprised when Isabel showed up at my apartment the next morning. I was surprised that she had the nerve to bring her mother with her. There was a sharp knock on my door, followed by a voice I recognized immediately as Isabel's mother, Diane. Zachary Carter, you open this door right now. I debated ignoring them, but I knew Isabel. If I didn't let them in, they'd cause a scene in the hallway, and I really wasn't in the mood to deal with my neighbor's pitying stares. I opened the door. Diane shoved past me before I could say a word, and Isabel followed, her arms crossed tightly. You humiliated my daughter, Diane snapped, rounding on me. After everything she's done for you, you just throw her away like she's garbage? I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Did Isabel tell you why I called off the wedding? Diane didn't even hesitate. She said you got cold feet and made up some ridiculous excuse about her not loving you enough. I exhaled slowly, looking at Isabel. You really can't help yourself, can you? Isabel lifted her chin, defiant. I told her my side of things. Oh, I bet you did. I pulled out my phone. I have actual evidence, Diane. Do you want to hear your daughter admitting that she was only with me for financial security? Diane hesitated. That's not possible. I hit play. Isabel's voice filled the room. Zach is just a placeholder. I mean, he's fine for now, but let's be real. He's not the kind of guy you marry if you want real money. I just have to make it to the wedding, and then I can start looking for an upgrade. Diane's face drained of color. Isabel's jaw tightened. That was taken out of context. Diane slowly turned to her daughter. Isabel, she whispered. Tell me you didn't say that. I was just talking, Isabel stammered. It didn't mean anything. Diane inhaled sharply, stepping back like she was seeing Isabel for the first time. I watched it happen, the exact moment Diane realized her daughter had been lying. She turned back to me, her lips pressed together. I'm sorry for barging in. Isabel gaped at her. Mom, Diane shot her a look. Be quiet, Isabel. I raised an eyebrow. So, are we done here? Diane hesitated, then nodded stiffly. Yes, we are. She grabbed Isabel's arm and yanked her toward the door. Isabel struggled. Mom, I know, Diane snapped. Not another word. I watched as Isabel was dragged out of my apartment, still sputtering. I waited until the door slammed shut before letting out a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. But I knew it wasn't over. Isabel wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And I was ready for whatever she tried next. I knew Isabel wasn't done. She had just lost her biggest power move, her mother. Diane was the only real leverage she had left. And now that she knew the truth, Isabel was alone. And I knew exactly what someone like her would do when cornered. She would go for the last thing she had left, my reputation. It started subtly. A few of her mutual friends stopped responding to my messages. Then I started getting odd looks from colleagues. Finally, my best friend, Jake, sent me a screenshot from Facebook. Isabel public post. I never thought the man I loved would betray me like this. 3 years together, and he threw me away like I was nothing. After everything I did for him. After I gave up so much for our future. Some people just don't know how to love. Below that, a flood of sympathetic comments. You deserve better, babe. Wow, what a coward. I always knew Zach was kind of selfish, TBH. If you need anything, I'm here for you, girl. I roll my eyes. Classic Isabel. No details, just vague, manipulative bullshit designed to make people pick her side. Jake texted right after. Jake, dude, she's playing the victim hard. She's telling people you CH'd. Me, of course she is. Jake, wanting to post the receipts. Me, not yet. I've got a better idea. I knew Isabel well enough to know she would slip up. She had built her entire life around manipulation and lies, and the one thing people like her couldn't handle was losing control of the narrative. So I gave her a little push. I sent her a text. Me, you win. Let's talk. I knew that would hook her. She wanted to believe. She had me crawling back. Sure enough, within seconds, she replied, Isabel. Oh, so now you want to talk? Me. Can we meet? Just to clear the air. Isabel, fine. My place. Tonight. Perfect. That night, I showed up at her apartment. She greeted me with a smug smile, standing in the doorway in an oversized sweater, looking every bit like the innocent victim she was pretending to be. You came to your senses, she said. I stepped inside, keeping my face neutral. Something like that. She closed the door behind me, arms crossed. So what do you want? I took a deep breath. You've been telling people I CH'd. Her eyes flickered, but she kept up the act. Well, can you blame me? You did betray me. I laughed. Right. And calling me a placeholder wasn't a betrayal? She scoffed. Zach, everyone talks SHD about their partners sometimes. I shook my head. No, Isabel. They don't plan to leave them the second they find someone richer. Her expression hardened. Are we done here? I smiled. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Jessica's voice filled the room again. Only this time, I had included more than just her message. I had recordings of Isabel's voice notes, laughing with her friends about how she would upgrade once she was married. I had screenshots of texts where she bragged about how much she could take from me if she played it right. And the best part? I had a recording from earlier that day of a phone call she had with one of her friends where she admitted to making up the CHing rumor. Her face went pale. I paused the audio. This is go to everyone you lied to. Her mouth opened, then closed. Your friends? Your family? Every single person who commented on your little sob story. I shook my head. They're going to know exactly who you really are. Her breathing grew shaky. You can't do that. I tilted my head. Why not? Because she swallowed. Because it'll ruin me. I smiled. Exactly. She stood there, frozen, her mind racing for a way out. But there wasn't one. Not this time. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to delete your post. You're going to tell everyone you lied. You're going to admit you made everything up because you were embarrassed. She swallowed hard. And if I don't, I played another snippet of her voice. Zach is so F-king stupid. He actually thinks I love him? Please. I'm just waiting for the ring, and then I'm gone. I raised an eyebrow. Should I keep going? She flinched. Her pride was screaming at her fight back, but she knew she had no moves left. Finally, she exhaled sharply and grabbed her phone. 2 minutes later, her Facebook post was gone. Then came another, Isabel public post. I want to set the record straight. I made some emotional, untrue statements about my ex, Zach, and I deeply regret it. I let my emotions get the best of me, and I take full responsibility. I smiled. Good girl. She glared at me. I hate you. I shrugged. You only hate me because I didn't fall for your bullshit. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. Oh, and Isabel? She looked up, eyes burning. You deserve this. Then I walked out, shutting the door behind me. The fallout was glorious. Once the truth was out, people turned on her. Friends who had rushed to comfort her suddenly went silent. Her own mother called me, mortified, and apologized again. And Isabel? She vanished from social media for a while. I heard through mutual friends that she had tried dating someone new, a guy she had been eyeing before we broke up, but word got around about what she'd done to me, and no one wanted to touch that drama. As for me, I moved on. It wasn't instant, but it was real. I focused on work, reconnected with old friends, and took a long, well-earned break from relationships. And then, months later, I met someone new, someone real, someone who actually gave a damn about me. And for the first time in years, I felt free.